Welcome into the Inside Bassmaster Podcast, episode 117. And the Inside Bassmaster Podcast is presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company. Excited to partner with them. I'm your host today, Ronnie Moore. My co-host, as usual, Kyle Jessie's in Birmingham, Alabama, doing everything and anything digital related to Bassmaster.com. Kyle, I'm excited for this episode of the podcast. It is kind of our winning ways episode. When you have back-to-back Elite Series events, there's just not enough time in the week, in the day, to be able to get all of these different winners on at different times. So this is our winners podcast for the first two Elite Series events. We're going to have Tyler Rivet and Joey Cifuentes on. What a great start to our season. And they kept us on our toes with everything we saw transpire in the first two Elites.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you look at both of the tournaments and you think to yourself, both of them were doing things opposite. I mean, basically completely opposite of what the rest of the field was doing, which, happens a decent bit. But when there's so many strong anglers that, have strengths that lined up perfectly with those two events, just to get beat by two guys that were doing completely opposite things was a little surprising to see. And, the margin of victory in both of them were fairly significant. So yeah, I mean, it was really pretty crazy two events to start the season. I'm certainly looking forward to talking with both those guys and getting a little more insight.
We had some intel on Seminole from Drew Cook, and obviously our histories of knowing that body of water and kind of what factored in last elites and what's factored in tournaments previously. But then at Lake Okeechobee, I mean, I was pretty dang dialed in, I'd say, with a group chat of anglers down at Okeechobee. They really dialed me in on areas that would factor and the reasons why, mostly being clear water and solid vegetation. But that place ended up fishing really small, comparatively. So many acres of fishable water, or so many acres of water, not all of it being fishable. Over the last decade, having that place kind of subtracted down to just a few key areas. Those areas all factored. We saw some South Bay and Dead Reed Bay. That's basically what the locals call it, because all of the reeds down there were dead and broken off or shorter than normal. They weren't tall from storms and spraying and other devastations. So it was kind of a subtle ditch deal that around those reed heads and whatever reeds were around that. Clark Windlet figured it out. Obviously, we know the Moonshine Bay, which goes up to the Monkey Box and Tin House and all of those different areas, all factored. The North Shore, big time for a couple areas. And then you have the Kissimmee River. That was on zero people's radar that I talked to previously. And to see someone catch them, I feel like in tournament fishing, when everyone's doing the same thing, you either have to go do something different, or when there are certain areas getting pounded, other areas aren't better necessarily. Like the Kissimmee River where Tyler Rivet was not better than Tin House, Moonshine on a given day. But over a 4-day period, if you have that to yourself or have most of the percentage of fish to yourself, that is a huge advantage you can't get anywhere else in the Elite Series.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that was such a bizarre tournament to cover. It was the first time I got to go down to Lake Okeechobee, and naturally you hear so much about people fishing in crowds. Everybody's on top of each other. It's this ginormous lake, and it really is that, fish is really small. And it was really weird. I was thinking about this morning before we started the podcast is, when we were covering guys on the water, you never got a sense for how big the lake was because everybody was fishing in the same general areas, it seemed. And then, like you mentioned, for Tyler to be doing something more or less completely different than everybody and having that water to himself. I mean, it was definitely interesting to see. Some of those areas, obviously by the third and fourth day, you get into Saturday and Sunday. It wasn't just elite guys either. It was a lot of locals, and you can start a whole nother conversation there, but it was a lot of boats in some of those areas. I mean, you could take a 360 around the boat, covering any elite guy, it seemed like on those last 2 days, and there would be 40 to 50 boats within sight. And it'd be one thing if that was the case, if it was guys lined up down like the Tennessee River, ledge fishing or something. I mean, it was guys basically 10, 20, 30 yards away. I mean, every direction. So it was really different. And it was also really cool. And I'm sure we'll get into this with Tyler, of course, but my boat driver was a guy down there in fishes tournaments, really good guy. And you could tell the shock on his face when Tyler was able to win doing what he was doing, because it's completely unheard of. Like you said, I mean, it really kind of came from left field. So yeah, to hear him confirm that, it'll be interesting to see what Lake Okeechobee is like, or has been like, if you could get some insight on that from that time till now, because I'm sure there's way more people fishing in the river than there normally would be.
Yeah, and one thing that, when you go to Florida, 3 or 4 baits that you have to have on your front deck. But I felt like Okeechobee fished a little different this year. You had Steve Kennedy with a popping frog. You had, Carl was throwing a swim jig and catching them on that and gluing trailers together to keep, the few pieces of tackle. I don't know. I guess Brandon Polinick, said no this week and not going to help him out with baits. But yeah, keeping a couple key baits. So you had a popping frog, swim jig. Jake Whitaker talked about swimming worm and a small, weightless swim bait, or like a small, small weight on a swim bait to run through those pads in some of those areas. Then you had a bladed jig work and a Texas rig, traditional Texas rig for Brandon Cobb. You got a jerk bait, obviously, for Rivet. You have punching for Logan Latuso. A lot of different things factored, and it was very cool to see a couple, areas kind of show out. You had a little sampling of 3 guys in the top 10 here. You even had Brandon Card going ultra finesse with a spinning rod the second half of the event to make the top 10. So you had a lot of these guys kind of doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so to see Tyler Rivet, though, prevail with something that he wouldn't consider his strength, to see that go down and to stick with it on day 3, I will admit, and I'll say this to him when he joins the podcast, I'll admit day 3 was super tough. And I thought going into the final day in 3rd place or so, I thought that he was going to spin. I thought that the train was not going to stay on the tracks in that situation. His head, you can kind of mess with yourself as an angler. And the first fish of that final day being a 6.5 pounder did wonders for him. If he goes and fishes for an hour and a half and catches a pounder or 2-pound fish and doesn't catch a 6.5, you start to worry about it and you start to do decisions that you wouldn't normally do. But the first one being a 6.5 pounder, you're like, okay, I'm ahead of the 8 ball. So why don't we just go ahead and get Tyler Rivet in the podcast and we can ask him all these questions and more about his Okeechobee win and how many jerseys he was able to buy with the $100,000 that he did, and obviously he this is a crazy situation in the fishing world. Tyler, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
So we were just talking about it. We were saying the $100,000 that you won at Okeechobee, have you been able to spend any of it? And did the majority of that go to buying more jerseys since you kind of depleted what you had there early in the season?
Definitely went to buying a few more jerseys, but I haven't even got to go to the bank yet for both of the checks. I'm still making the right moves with everything. I don't want to push everything quick, so making sure I do everything right with it.
Tyler, we were kind of talking about all the different patterns and everything at Okeechobee that led up to, the top 10 day and your win. We'll ask a lot of different time questions like practice and day 1 when you caught the big bags, things like that, day 2 when you almost had 30. But tell me your feelings and thoughts when you had the different weather on day 3 and you had your smallest bag of the week. I was just telling Kyle, I was worried for you that if day 4 didn't start out strong, that you might be spinning, that you might want to go do something else, and that you might not give it the time needed. But starting day 4 with a big one, I mean, give me your thoughts from day 3 weigh-in, being in contention still, but having a tough day, to how, immediate day 4 was like, okay, we can do this.
I don't know. That's going into day 3. I swore I was like, that's my moving day. That's when I could jump up there and I could catch 25 easy still. And I would say easy, but I knew they were there, and I figured that was perfect jerkbait conditions, post front, windy, cloudy, just pushed them off the banks, and that's exactly where they were sitting. So I figured there would just be more and more there. And then whenever we got there, day 3 that morning, the water dropped like a foot in the river, I guess from the north winds pushing it out. Right when I started, I was like, man, we're about to catch them. And first off, I caught like a 3-pounder. I'm like, okay, they're here. And I started off more than what I normally do. I caught like 2 small ones each other day. And I just went from there, and they were not there. They just disappeared on me. After I caught that first one, they never came back, and they just swam away. I don't know what the deal was. And the way the wind was blowing too didn't really help. It wasn't letting me position myself. It kept blowing me onto the fish instead of with I think it was a northwest wind or southwest wind. It was pushing me off of them. So I was able to throw use the live scope and still back off of them and let them chase me off the spot instead of me pushing onto the spots. So it kind of hurt myself, but at the same time that day I kind of rode around and tried to find new spots, and I guess it ended up helping me at the end with that bad day. But it did scare me, because I figured I would be able to catch them, and I was just thinking in my mind the whole day that everybody else was just wrecking them. But Cobb came in the river at the end of the day and he gave me the thumbs down. And when he passed me, I'm like, oh, like damn, like we might have a shot. Like in that at that second, I started fishing as hard as I could, and I went back on that spot and stayed there the rest of the day. I was like, we're not leaving it because I know I could catch a 5-pounder here. And I don't know, I think we called up once or twice maybe there, but it was like little bitty calls. And yeah, that going into the final day, I knew it was the same conditions as every other day that I caught them. So I kind of had hope. I didn't want to overdo it. I just like, let me just go out there. I hope they're there. I know they're there. I seen them there to day 3. They just didn't bite. And the main deal was just hoping that damn shiner boat wasn't there. He kept trying to come in on the first 2 days. And like once, I left there the first day. I had like 20 something pounds. So I left there. I went try to find new stuff, and I came back. And when I was there, he was sitting on the spot, catching like a 5 and a 3, like back to back in the same net, like netting them both at the same time. And he just picked them up and threw them. And I just left because I didn't even want to watch it. So I figured he would be there every day. But going into the final day, I had a backup plan that I never got to use. We had, whenever me and Brock came pre-fish it, we caught them in Taylor's Creek, and it was post front conditions, windy, and the same thing. We had like 20 pounds, 18, 20 pounds in that canal. And I never got to go there. We went there first day of practice when it was windy before I found that spot in the Kissimmee River. And I went there, I caught one about 4.5, and then I caught like a few solid ones, but I knew I could get bitten there. So I figured if all else fails that final day, just pick up and go and get in there. And the crazy part is, dude, I had a dream like 2 nights ago that like this was all happening again, and it was the final day, and I ended up going into Taylor's Creek and still catching and winning somehow. It was the weirdest dream ever. But yeah, that was my plan going into the final day.
That's crazy. One thing I was thinking about the other day, in hindsight, is a cool thing to look back on. I guess it would have been day 2 that you caught the 8-pounder, the really big one. She's a runner, she's a track star. Was that no, day 2?
It's like 6:12 or something like that.
Okay, well, I might have been overshooting it and I never got to see. But in hindsight, it's cool to look back. At that moment, you literally said to the camera, we're gonna win this tournament. And at that time, it seemed like that's a pretty bold prediction. Like, these guys are catching them really good. And like Tyler's saying he's going to win the tournament. Like, at that moment, did you just have like this overwhelming feeling that like everything was going to go right? Like, what was your mindset there?
I don't remember saying it. I just remember watching the videos and everything of it, and me saying it. I'm like, damn, I just said what, like he said. I was like, that's pretty bold to say that. But no, I guess it just came out of me. I was like, if we land this fish, we'll win. And it just, because everything was happening perfectly. Like, I didn't lose a fish all tournament. And I think that's how you win these tournaments. Or I know that's how you win. Because I remember tons of tournaments where I'm like, oh, if I'd have caught this one or caught that one, I'd be in the top 10. And I mean, that happens for everybody. It's just the people that don't miss the fish. You only get so many opportunities and big ones.
Well, behind the scenes of Bass Live, people were asking, hey, Tyler Rivet from back in the college series. Has he always been like this? And I said, oh, yeah, there's that meter of confident, and then it's like cocky. And I was like, he teeters that confident and cocky line a whole bunch, but it did well for you this week. But how you're an Elite Series pro, all the techniques, the different, drop shotting up north, all these different things, jerk baiting, but you spoke about it, that Hank helped dial in, live scope with you over the last few years. Obviously his jerk bait and probably hearing him just overuse it, gave you confidence to use it. But how were you able to say, I'm going to win this event on a bait and a technique that you probably didn't even think you'd have rigged up in the boat, when you started practice or pre-practice?
I don't think I had it rigged up. I think I did. I can't remember if I did or not, but yeah, it was just one of those deals where I was like, all right, like I caught a few sockeye on it pre-fishing. That's why I had it rigged up. I was on the way down. I stopped there a couple of days before and was fishing John's Lake, I think it is, and it's about 2 hours north of there. It's in Orlando, and that lake I wrecked them on it last year before the first tournament at Palaca. And I went over there hoping I could do the same with the jerkbait, catching them. And I caught a few doing it, but I think that's the main reason I had it rigged up at that time. But I think if I'd have turned the live scope on in that river and seen that, I definitely would have tied it up no matter what, because it was pretty obvious they were bass.
So let's talk about that. I mean, we can't even talk to you without like hearing the full story of the sockeye and the crappie fishing before the tournament. What I will say, and I haven't said this to anybody, I can accredit this is all true based on Hank and I were shooting a boat tour the day before the tournament started, and he told us that you had went crappie fishing. He didn't mention anything about the bass turning up there, but give us the full rundown of that, because I think most people heard that and they were like, what? He was doing what? And he found the winning school of fish? Like, just tell us the story from practice, to the tournament day.
Yeah, it just happened like that. It was like I said, we went first day. Me and Brock went to Taylor's Creek. Brad went in the JBS or JMS canal, JNS canals, and then Hank went in the Burkhead ones. So we all kind of split up just to figure out if we could catch them anywhere. And we stayed in Taylor for a while, and then we left. And I was like, all right, let's just Brock's like, let's just put in the Kissimmee. He was thinking about going up to Kissimmee or going to the lake. And so I just put in there. My thought was like, I was kind of done fishing for the day. It was like 3:00. And I was like, well, all these sockeye boats out here. So let me turn the live scope on and see if I can start catching some. So I just went up about a mile or so and just started looking around, and I started picking them off left and right with the jerk bait. And like off the bank, you could see them just suspended out there. And I picked up the tube jig. I had probably about 20 sockeye in the live well when I caught that first bass. And I just so happened to like to scan up there shallower. And I was like, well, let me get back up on the bank, see if I can start punching or flipping or doing something. And at that moment, like when I was heading toward the bank, I could see like a few fish just sitting right up on that, in between the bank and that ledge. It's probably about 20 foot wide from where it drops off at to the bank. And they were just kind of suspended. And I was like, well, that's a little too big for sockeye, and that's not a garfish. And it was obviously how it was sitting there as a bass. So I threw over there first cast on it. It was like 6-pounder. And watch, see if I can pull the picture. I don't know how good it would be, but I literally was going through my pictures the other day, and I want to post it. It's the fish, that one fish. I was like, wow, if I wouldn't have caught that one fish, I wouldn't have won,
Kyle, he should find this pick pretty quick, because it's not a muscle pick. It's the fish.
Yeah.
Fish pick.
But that's the fish right there. Probably hard to see, but
no, you're good.
And that one kind of targeted me into, and I wasn't even on the main spot where I was at for the most of the tournament. I was just going down the bank, and I went a little further, caught like a 4-pounder, and then I pulled it away from 2 more like quick. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to keep doing this. This is dumb. And so I went across. It was still like windy as hell too, so you could only really stay on one side. So I just went on the opposite side just to see if I could do it, and I was able to even do it in the wind. So I knew it was something that maybe could happen, but at the same time, I was like, it's probably not going to happen because conditions are going to be different for the tournament, and it's going to be bluebird skies. It's going to be like not as windy and different wind. And I just thought it was a fluke. I figured they'd be up on the bank, and you just had to figure out how to catch them in the bushes, because those bushes went for 10 yards onto the bank, and it was just so hard to catch a fish in there because there was so much of it. So I figured they would just push in there, but I stopped there the first morning on that main spot, and that was it.
It seemed like, and you said this, I got a couple questions, but I'll ask this one and we can get into the other ones later. This one's more important. You said on your marathon peak performance that we're going to release later this week, and I'll have to send you a preview of it, of your winning week, that you'd see 40, 50, maybe even 60 fish before you get them to bite. Are those all fish that you wanted to target and you were trying to catch them, or are they just, I could see fish everywhere and I could finally get one out of those 60 to react? Or was it, it seemed like you stayed on the spot for the most part. And so is that the same 60 fish, or is it just brand new fish? Like that's how many fish were in the Kissimmee River out there.
It was that many fish in there. It was, I could go 100 yards this way, 100 yards that way, and I'd still see some, but they weren't setting up right like that one little point was. It was a little hard spot, and they would just come over it, and they would sit there for a little bit. And when they were sitting probably about that high off the bottom, you're like, all right, if I could put it about 2 feet, 3 feet above them, they'll come up and eat it every time. And that's, you can see I was watching some of the videos too, like on the live scope, you'd see them come up, and every time they would eat it. And it's just crazy thinking that like I didn't lose a one fish all week on a jerkbait doing that. So it's cool. I did have some pull off, like they'd hit it and just kind of like swipe at it, I guess. But when they were hooked up, come jumping, and I mean, I swear they were smallmouth. I've never seen largemouth jump this much. And Andy loved it.
Well, that one that Kyle thought was an 8-pounder, when it jumped, you hooked it and it jumped at the trolling motor, and you're like, this could be an 8. And then obviously, it's just a pound lighter. But yeah, like I was very impressed. I was very impressed with your hook to land ratio. And honestly, some of the visuals we saw, has live scope helped you as an angler understand, not just catching fish, but just understanding the way they react, the time of day when they pull up on places? We always talk about those bite windows that, they pull up on this ledge at this time to feed. You can visually see that if you stay on a spot long enough. And did you see that kind of migration?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would sit on that one little point where that little canal would come out at, and sometimes like when you pull up there in the morning, it was just looks like you were about to it was a Kentucky lake school, and like nobody's found it ever. And you throw out there, and you catch one, and when you catch one, if you could hurry up, put it in the box, hurry up, throw out there again, you could catch them because they'll be all right by the boat. But most of the time, you pull them off and then just kind of swim off, and that's what they would do a lot of times. You pull them off, and you just have to go fishing down the bank, and then come back about an hour later. And I kind of bounced to the spots. I had 3 little main canal spots, like points that I kind of dialed in on. And I would just bounce. I'd catch one here, maybe 2 if I was lucky. I'd go to the next one, catch 1, 2, and then just make a big triangle for the most part through. And yeah, you could just tell, like you could pull up there, like, okay, they're not ready yet. There's nothing really sitting like they need to be. I'd go to another spot, or I'd just head down the bank and sit off the bank and just like throw far at it and get them on that ledge. So it's still crazy to think about it, how they were sitting up and just nobody else found it. That was the crazy part.
Tyler, one thing I wanted to ask you about was, obviously like Ronnie mentioned earlier, obviously followed you, throughout college and everything. And, the one thing I think about with Louisiana guys, typically there's like this misconception that Louisiana guys are only good at fishing shallow. They're only good at punching. They're only like, I'm sure you've heard it yourself, like when people talk to you about fishing, but like even throughout college, you were so well-rounded, fishing deep, fishing off the bank. Where does that stem from for you? Like, was it, growing up fishing? Was it the college series that helped you develop that? Just how were you so able to be well-rounded when, like I said, this misconception is that like Louisiana guys can only fish in the dirt?
Well, that's how it is. If you are from Louisiana, it's like that's all we do down here. Our deepest water is 6 foot unless you go in the Gulf. And I mainly just learned fishing from, like you said, college fishing, just getting in every tournament I could for bass, traveling everywhere, going wherever we could, all the way to like Missouri, Oklahoma. I mean, just our region, our central region. And it just Pickwick's the main way that I learned how to fish deep. And I mean, obviously we didn't have live scope or anything back then. It was just 2D and just downscan and stuff. So I was able to learn how to fish ledges and just teach myself by going to Pickwick every year. So that's what helped out. That's what I tell all the kids too. If like you want to learn how to ledge fish, the best place to go is Pickwick, because there's no like the stumps or anything. There's no like, it's just a ledge. And if there's fish there, there's fish that you can see. So it gives you the idea of what they look like without other structure around it. That's where I learned how to ledge fish. And then I guess more of like the finesse tactics too. While I was just drop shotting and just Toledo Bend. I fished Toledo Bend a lot when I was in college. Like every weekend I'd head up there and I'd kind of make myself go fishing. 2 days. I'd drive up there for 2 days and come back home. So it was just putting the time in and not knowing what would actually come out of it. I thought it was just a dream,
And then young Tyler even was practicing fishing a specific spot all day long at Lake Dubay, where he knew there was 4 fish here and he had to catch 3 of them every single day of the Dubay National Championship event. Tyler, what have you heard? Have you had any Okeechobee locals message you or send you stuff on social media after the event about how many people have fished there or are fishing there now? Is it a new is it a new spot on Okeechobee we'll need to factor in every time now? Or do you think that's just a time of year thing? Because I'll say, I was telling Kyle, I was completely prepared for Okeechobee. I got all the map breakdown. I knew the areas that would factor. And then there was still a curveball with you in the Kissimmee River.
Yeah, I think it threw everybody for a loop down there, because you could even go through the tackle stores down there and you couldn't find a one jerk bait really. Hank even told me after that tournament that all of them down there stocked up and they were already sold out already. So I'm guessing there's a lot of people doing it down there now. And I'm sure, I mean, it's fishing. As somebody's learned that spot, somebody did that spot before and figured it out before, but maybe I just kind of put it on the map on accident. I mean, sorry that I did, but that spot's definitely going to be burnt next time we go. There's going to be people there no matter what. And that's what happens. That's what we all talk about. Every time somebody finds something off the wall for a turn or an area, like you go back the next time, you could count on that not happening. So it's hopefully, I mean, you can still go through there. And I mean, there's plenty of more rivers. And I was able to I didn't even get to go to half of my other spots. That there were some spots in the rim ditch and some other canals that I was able to do the same thing live scoping. I even had one spot. It was a pretty cool spot. Like, I'm mad I didn't get to go, but I guess not. That I'm not mad. But I can't be mad about it. But it was an old fence road coming into the water, and they were stacked on it. Like, you could see the fence on live scope, and they were just sitting on it. And I was able to catch 1 4-pounder on it for practice, and there was like 10 or 12 of them come with it. And I just never made it there. So it was pretty cool to think, like, I wonder what would happen if I went there too. So I did have a couple backup plans, but it was just so hard. Like y'all say, like my gut, like it was just that gut feeling, like I couldn't leave. You know, I had to stay there. I was like, if I'm gonna win, I have to stay here and fight it out, because I knew it was there.
Now I gotta ask you this. So obviously they're selling the heck out of those jerk baits down there. What's the revenue share between you and Hank on the royalties and things of that nature? Have we discussed that? Let's get into that some.
Yeah. No, I think there is. I hope the best for like Hank and his jerk bait, because it gave me my first win, and I mean, I hope he sells out everywhere. You know, it's a really good bait. And the thing is, Excite, we're coming out with a jerk bait. I actually got the prototype finally, and another one, the first day for the tournament, I broke it on my trawler motor, so it did first day of practice actually, so didn't really work out well. But we got the prototype coming, and it should be here anytime now. It's just something we've been working on, and Lloyd with Excite, he's all about me. You know, he believes in me and like what I do, and he's like, dude, so if you're a jerk baiter, like, we're gonna make you a jerk bait. Like, we're gonna do something that you like to do, just like I'm a frog fisherman and a punching bait that we came out with. So we got a frog coming out in the next couple months. We're working on it. I was actually using it down there at Seminole. And then after that, we got the jerk bait. So hopefully that all comes out quick. It's just a timeline deal now. But I mean, it's a great company. They're behind me 100%. And that's why I'm always backing them up, because they do a lot for me.
And I got to say, this weekend, if I get to go fishing, I've got your topwater tied on from Excite that Lloyd sent me. So, yeah, hopefully that works out for me as well as it does you on a usual basis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's good bait.
So Tyler, tell me a little bit about the pro fishing game that you've learned about. It's not just catching bass. There's a business side of it. And, you know, there's a good business side of it, an excitement of new sponsors, new companies, you know, rods, things like that. It seems like those people have, you know, F5 have gotten behind you quickly in a hurry. And obviously they've yielded some good benefits from your first event with them. But then there's also the part of it of losing sponsorships or them just not coming to fruition, you know, something timeline wise, money wise, whatever it is, they go a different direction. Those things are hard to handle, but I know you had a situation this off season that was tough, but you took it in stride and have used it to brand yourself. I mean, mine aren't as big as yours, but but the jersey, the logo, that whole aspect of it came out of a bad situation, it seems. And it's probably done more for your brand than if there was a logo in that place. Can you talk to me a little bit about that behind the scenes? Kendall, yourself, your family, just taking good strides into the season.
Yeah, it came at us like out of nowhere, talking to them, walk on. So we're like, yeah, we'll be good for next year. Everything should be good. And then right before Christmas, they text me like, oh, hey man, we can't do it next year. And that's it. Like, sorry. And I'm like, well, damn, like it's just late December. Everybody does their budgets by October, November latest sometimes. So I knew I was kind of screwed on that part with trying to get a new title deal. And Kendall and my mom and them, they were just like, you know what, you need to just brand yourself, make this year about you and just have fun with it, like we could figure out something with the money. And I was able to, like, with sponsorships, I definitely obviously didn't have a title, so it was way harder to put the entry fees up. And so I was coming out of pocket. And then, so yeah, it just so I guess everything works out, how it's supposed to, because I didn't expect any of this to happen. And going from stressing all year to having to go back to my first 2 years where I have to make checks to make money. And I have to get in that third day just so I can make money and not come home negative. So the first two events kind of surpassed what I made all last year, and last year was my best year. So, but I mean, like I tell everybody else, I'm not quitting now. I still got to make the checks. I still got to go in there because I want to make that classic and I want to keep my points up, and I don't want to bomb the rest of the season. So I'm gonna go back to what we normally do and try to make the day threes and see what we could go from there.
Well, I'll say first off, I know Ronnie and I can't stop smiling because that is such an awesome, like, the way that worked out. I mean, yeah, the way that like things always work out the way they're supposed to is really awesome. But that's something I actually wanted to get into with you, is that second event. Obviously, you win at Okeechobee, and then you go to the second event, and you were pretty open about saying you didn't really have a good practice, but it seemed like you were just fishing free and just having a good time, like from day one on, and it seemed to work out so well for you. So, like, explain to me how that felt, obviously going into that tournament, and then really like 2 events in, how does the rest of the year feel? I mean, it's got to feel like you got everybody in the crosshairs, like you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like going into Seminole, we drove through right after taking all those pictures when I was with you. And just got in the truck. My stepdad drove us up there about 6.5 hours. So I wish we'd have had an off day, because I literally had 400 or 500 texts and I just couldn't even function. People calling this, and I even going through the tournament. I mean, the practice days. Like I just put my boat in the water first thing Monday morning, and I just kind of sat there. Just sat in the boat. I didn't even. I was just wore out. I'm like, oh, let me just pick up a rod and go. And I was actually on a grass line, and I was like, well, damn, I did it last tournament, so let me start finding a sockeye first. And sure enough, I actually caught like a 2.5 pounder bass first on a jerk bait. And then like next cast, there was just a big wall of sockeye come out the grass. I'm like, so I threw out there, of course, and I catch one, and I probably had 20, and my smallest one was like 1.75 pounds. And I mean, obviously they were all in the live well too. So we ate good that night again, and it honestly.
Wait, that's all 20 crappie? That's all for one night at least? I mean, you probably caught more than 20, but that's just one night.
They're lucky I left them, because I could have stayed there and just filled the boat up. But I think the limit over there was 30. So I checked on all that. The second I catch one, I'll get on there. I'm like looking, see what I need to do, and make sure everything. So I think it was 30 a person. Or it was 20 or so. So I just stopped at 20 and left. And I mean, we didn't need any more than 20 because they were that big. And I get pumped up when I catch sockeye. That's my favorite. We went yesterday about lunchtime over here just to go catch them. And I mean, they were little bitty down here. So catching those down up there are just awesome. And it was one of my backup spots. That's where I was going to start going into Seminole. And I made it there through the first day, but they were gone. Like the grass fish were gone, and that kind of obviously it was warming up. So it was like, all right, they're not on the grass, they're moving out. But it was literally across the lake, or a little Spring Creek from where Joey was. And I just didn't really want to live scope that event. So I never really put time into it. I kind of stayed shallow. I want to punch, I want to flip, frog, I want to do all that stuff and just kind of prove everybody like, look, it's not just a fluke from live scope and that like I won. Like I want to show them I could catch them shallow too. And sure enough, luckily I was able to catch them shallow too.
I gotta say this because Ronnie, I'll forget this and it'll go to waste forever. But I feel like, Mercer is typically the name guy, the nickname, that on stage name. But I feel like around y'all's house, at least, you gotta be Tyler the Provider Rivet, because I mean, you literally provide groceries for every tournament, it seems. Like, I mean, like, do you have 2 game plans going to each lake? Like your crappie game plan to provide food, and then your bass game plan to provide, tournament results. I mean, there's got to be something going on here.
Yeah, it's like that for sure. Even if we go up north, I'll have the walleye in the box, and we'll clean those. We cleaned some pike before too. We'll eat them all. It just helps out with the groceries, and I mean they like the cooking, they like the fried food, so and it's fun. Like that's what I keep telling everybody with the tournament. Like Brock's just 100% serious all day, like daylight dark goes like every day, and me and Hank are just like chill. Like we just like. I'm glad Hank's getting back to how he was, because last year he was just daylight to dark too, and like he wasn't fishing like himself, and now he's getting back to it where he gets off the water 2-3 o'clock and he knows what he's going to do and he don't get in his head. So it worked out for him this year so far. So hopefully it goes back to it. But yeah, I like having fun. Like we're out here having fun, and you still have to have fun even though it's a job. Because once you start getting too serious with it, you kind of mess yourself up and your head up. So. Once I catch that, if I get that sockeye pole out or catch me a walleye or something, I have fun. So it calms me down for sure.
Tell us about that spot at Seminole, because I can see it on the private maps. We talked to Drew Cook as our preview for Seminole while he was out practicing, and he had explained the different types of grass and vegetation that are in the lake. And then he said there's some grass up in the Flint that you gotta, mow it with you gotta cut it with a mower if you want to do it. It's thick. It looks like yard grass. I don't know what it is, and I don't like it. And it almost sounded like, not speaking for Drew, but it almost sounded like that was not even in his game plan to even, he didn't like it. If he saw it, he wasn't around it. He's going to stick away from that. Yet day one, we turn on the camera and I see you in an area that has that. And I said, I was worried. I was like, this could go bad for Tyler because Drew said that was terrible grass. But then we started to see the different baits come into play. Explain to us that grass, because I've never seen it anywhere else really, other than maybe someone's flooded backyard when the water gets high.
So the main thing it looked like for me, which I'm pretty sure it's the same region, it's like that the hay grass, kind of like Toledo Bend used to have. It's similar to that, but it's way like he said, like way thicker. It looks like somebody just threw a big thing of grass out in the lake, but it just kind of reminded me of Toledo Bend. And when I found that grass and was fishing around it, and we do the same thing at Toledo Bend when it's pre-spawn or spawn, they'll get behind those little pockets and them openings, and they'll, even at my house when we had grass, it's all dead now, but we had little patches like that of we call it floton, and it's just a patch of an island that comes off and it sinks, and it's just somewhat harder, it's just like that grass was, and it just kind of reminded me of like that, and I kind of tuned into it the first day of the tournament because for practice they weren't really in it yet. I was catching them punching off of it, and that's why I really went into that spot. And I punched for a little bit, no bites. So I was like, all right, well, let me get a little shallower, and that's when I started catching them shallower. And then the second day I did, like I said, with Toledo Bend, I got behind it, and it was just little bitty lane. It's like little pockets, as you saw, like little open holes, and there was beds all over probably in there. So I'd power pull down and literally just throw a wacky worm all day, and just you pick them off left and right. So
that's looking at it. It looked like little pools. Like I don't know how deep the pools of water are, but they're cut up and divided. It seemed like every bite you'd have to drag them over 10 feet of grass at some point. And so do you think they were getting ready to spawn, not necessarily locked on, because they had some of the most visual swirls and wakes coming to your bait? I mean, I was like, holy cow, feed that into my veins, because that was awesome watching them, just navigate up in basically no water coming after baits.
It was about 2 foot average where they were in that area. And when the sunlight would kind of get up there, I'd look down, and in some of the shallower spots where you get about a foot and a half, you could see where they had beds at. And I obviously, like, I caught the fish out of there, so they weren't there. But yeah, they were definitely like protecting beds. You could tell, like you were saying, how you'd see them swirling around and just chasing stuff off. And that was the main deal. If you could catch one in that action of like moving around and trying to go, you could throw that bait in there that quick and put it right in that little wake, you'll catch them. And I was able to do that a couple times. And they had one stretch. It was the day 3 when I had the 25 something, 25-11. That one little stretch, I figured it out late in the day that they moved there, like big ones were on this one little 50-yard stretch behind the grass. And I was able to get in there, and I picked a 6-pounder off and then like a 4-pounder and I didn't need it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to leave these for the final day.
Yeah.
Final day, I went in there, and then sure enough, I got in there and you could see them swelling already on that bank. I'm like, oh, it's about to go down. And they just were not eating. I think I was only able to catch one out of that area that day. It was tough, you know. And at that point, dude, like going into when they weren't there, I was like, you know what? I need to probably just back off, do something different, or just go somewhere else. And I just started running around. And at that point, I knew I was out of it at that. Like I needed the 22, 23 pounds. I was in that cove. And I think I literally hooked every fish in that cove. I know I did, because multiple times I'd catch one the next day and it would have the hook mark from I caught them. So they literally get in a live well, I'd call them out, put them back in there, and they eat again the next day.
Someone's been here. Oh, that was me.
Yeah. And I couldn't leave. It was one of those spots, like I did leave, but like the second you'd leave that area, like 2 more boats would come in. And so you have this, like if I didn't catch them, somebody else did.
So one thing I wanted to mention as well was, you know, we kind of talked about obviously how much of a hot streak you're on, obviously, to start the season. Explain to people like Ronnie and myself that will never get on a hot streak like that, how it feels to make decisions like when things are going right, like compared to like, you know, end of last year when like your season's on the line, making the classic, not making the classic, like how stressful those decisions were then versus like at Seminole, like how easy it was to make decisions.
It's way lighter. You feel about 30, 40 pounds lighter, you know. And I guess I never felt that feeling like coming off of a win. So I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if you bomb. I didn't know if you do good. So it just kind of was just going fishing, you know. And I think that's the good part, when you're able to just go out there and go fishing and nothing on your mind. Like, I need to make this cut. I need to do that. And it was just so quick that I didn't have any time to process the win or anything. So I was just like, I need to just chill out and fish, you know. And hopefully for the rest of the year, yeah, I could keep that momentum going with that, because just having fun and fishing. Because yeah, I got 206 points or something right now, but we do the average of about 500, 505 to make the classic every year. And so I did the average. It's like 60 something place a tournament for the rest of the year, but that's not bombing. That's, you know, doing good. So I'm still going to make it to where, like, I want to keep this momentum going. I want to win the classic. I mean, why not?
And angler of the year. I mean, who knows?
I mean, I'm not getting greedy, but hey, if you got a shot to do it, like, I'm definitely going to try. But it's a long road. There's 7 more tournaments, and it's a lot of different lakes in there. So you just got to go out there.
You got a first and a third. Your 2 best Bassmaster Elite Series, or your best Bassmaster events in general, because I think your best finishes prior were 5th in the Opens 2 times, and then you had a 6th in the Elites, or I think 2 6ths. So 2 top 5s, a first and a third. You're riding that momentum into the Classic. The Classic's going to be a totally different fishery than the first 2. You could see a little bit of both. You could see some shallow fishing like you did at Seminole, maybe not with the grass, obviously, but then you could see some live scoping. Have you thought about the Classic? Did you get to pre-practice it? And are there any takeaways from the 2021 Elite Series event there that you can maybe feel more familiar going into the Classic with all the kind of the weight of the world of, you know, the eyeballs? If you're not in the top 10, I mean, is it a disappointment at this point?
It would be for me, you know, like, I'm not top 10 or nothing now, you know. I didn't go pre-fish it this year. I'm basing everything off of the 2021. Whenever we went, I looked at the whole lake for the most part, and we were there a little earlier, I think. So I think it's going to help with live scope, because back then I didn't use the live scope that much or confidently. So this year, I have a lot of last year I had a lot of confidence in it. I caught probably 80% of my fish last year on live scope. I just kind of kept it under the radar. I just kind of didn't really just told them about it in my group, and it's just hopefully I could use that to my advantage going into the classic. Is if they are off the bank a little bit, that I could pick them off with the live scope, even though a lot of people hate it, but whatever, got to make checks, So I do what I can, and other than that, if it is shallow, I know what to expect. Just get up there, start cranking, just put trolling motor down, and go. So I'm not a rock person. I hate rock lakes. Yeah, throughout college, throughout every time, like I hate. It was just my weakness. Like I don't know. I need grass, and I think I built my confidence more now that I got live scope. It's just not even if I'm using it, I just know I could catch fish now, and I know what to do. I know how to fish the points. I know how to just go down the bank to transitions, and so that's what I'll be looking for when I go up there.
There's a lot of dreams that anglers have in this sport, and this will be the last one before we let you go. It was a dream to go and have, to be successful in college. You created that. You had a dream to make the college team. You set it up. It ended up going very well for you guys, and you specifically. Then you had a dream of making the Elite Series. You do that through the Opens. It was probably a dream to win a Bassmaster Elite Series event. You do that at Okeechobee. What would it mean to you to win the Bassmaster Classic? And other than, Jordan Lee, really one of the only college anglers to achieve that mark and get there.
It would be, I don't even know. Like, I haven't planned that far. Like, I was just always, I just like, I want to make the classic, and then I want to win a tournament. I wasn't ever greedy, and now I'm in the classic. I just won my first tournament. So it's just, yeah, you got to go for it. Like, what else you fishing for? Like, I was watching Mercer's podcast with Rick Clunn last night, and it's just like, what's his next goal, And it's just like, that's, I guess, for me, just the blue trophies are nice, but like, I just keep going. I mean, he's got everything you could think of. So I just couldn't imagine what that feels like. I want to get that feeling, where I'm like, I got everything I wanted. So now what do I do? So, but I don't have it yet. So we're going to try hard to go for it. And I mean, just to win a classic, I just won in a tournament's crazy. I couldn't imagine a classic. So the biggest start, like what kind of got me into the fishing, it just watching the classics at Bayou Signet and in New Orleans, and just seeing everybody come through the fog. I can remember that, and it's a cool feeling, and it's just, I'd love for it to be that down here again. And I mean, I doubt it ever will, just because it's bad, but just to be in a classic itself, like just like last year when I got in my first classic, I wasn't really that stressed about it. I was like, I'm just going to go out here and have fun, because you never know. I may never make another classic again. So I just went out there and lived it like it was my last classic. And sure enough, luckily next year I'm in another one. So we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to go win it.
I think that Kyle and the Birmingham Cruise Classic odds thing that they did, a couple months ago have to be re-upped, and we need to bracket it next week with the fishing odds, because Rivet, Jacobson, a lot of these guys are fishing very, very good right now. Tyler, I appreciate you joining us on the podcast. This episode, the Winning Ways podcast from the first two Elite Series events. You got it done. You almost got back-to-back. You would have been the first angler in Bassmaster history to win the first two Elite Series events back-to-back to start the season. We've had back-to-back before, just never to start the year. Almost perfect points as well, Kyle. Tyler, appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon, especially at the Classic.
Yes, sir. See y'all. Thank y'all.
See ya. Kyle, Tyler Rivet, what a cool story. Great momentum, man. I mean, dude's on top of the fishing world right now. I can't imagine what that feels like, and still have the motivation that, hey, job's not done. I need to make the 2024 Classic as well this year with my performance.
Yeah, pretty remarkable start. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but he said something there towards the end that made me think. He was saying that he wanted to get to the point where he's like, well, I think I've done everything I want to do, but Tyler as a competitor will never get to that point, because he's exactly that. He's a competitor, and he's going to continue to want more. And that's kind of, obviously what you have to do in this sport. So, no, actually to to reaffirm your classic odds thing, Brian Brasher is actually updating the classic odds, and I would have to be willing to bet that Tyler Rivet's odds have changed since the gallery first came out. So that'll be interesting to see whenever we republish that.
We'll have to have Brasher on the podcast then, for the classic preview. We'll talk classic, we'll do that stuff, and then we'll have to have him give his rationale on, we'll see what the odds were and what they have now changed to for some of these anglers. But man, yeah, I know when Tyler Rivet wins second, third, fourth elite event at some point throughout his career, he'll say, hey, who has the record for the most Elite Series titles? Yeah. And then, hey, how many AOYs is the most? And he'll send that text to me because he's always motivated. And that's one thing that I always rib Tyler, because I've known Tyler for a long time when he was just when he was cocky and had no reason to be cocky, and now he has reasons to be cocky. But I think the fans of the sport are intrigued by him because he seems to be having fun. And that's what we all got into fishing for, was to have fun. He's not only having fun, he's not just goofing around in 60th having fun. He's being highly successful. That's huge in this sport when you start to get those credentials. And now, obviously, he's created his own brand. For those who hate the muscle flexing or whatever, they think it's, he's too cocky doing that. I like to say to them, privately, or this is a message to them, and you can understand this. 90, it's random numbers if I'm saying this out, but 90% of professional fishermen don't have an identity. They don't have a nickname. They don't have any kind of branding other than maybe their boat wrap every year doesn't change. The sponsors may change, but the color schemes, those things don't change. Not many anglers have a brand that a Hank Cherry, champ, winning back-to-back classics. When you've got the prodigy because Brandon Pollitt came out of the gates so hot. Rivet flexing his muscle, that's part of his identity. He loves working out, and it's a brand that people can recognize. Patrick Walters has the short shorts, and he's got the credentials of victories to go along with it. But when you see these different personalities, that's what makes the sport awesome, is seeing those different guys. And, Ish Monroe's got his own swag, when he was on the Elite Series, and now he's trying to make it back. And we see that in the Opens now. Everybody's got their own deal for the most part, but 90% of them don't have a recognizable brand. Now we recognize if somebody does, there's kids now doing this when they catch a big one, and we'll know, what it's from.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually haven't really given that a whole lot of thought, but I'd say I'm probably in the majority of, like, whenever he started doing that, I started seeing those photo galleries on Bassmaster.com. I was like, I love Tyler to death, but I was like, what are you doing? It's like, this is so goofy, like, so, just so different is really what it is. But then, you really make a great point. Like, that has taken on a world of its own in 2 events. I mean, obviously not that he just started working out or started taking physical fitness serious, but like, in the span of 2 events, this has really taken on a whole world of its own. And I think, you make a good point. A lot of guys go their whole careers without, truly having that thing that, like, sets them apart, or, people recognize them for. And there's certainly worse things to be recognized for than being in good shape, for sure. Most people get recognized for not being in good shape, like myself. So, I mean, for him, that's a great thing for, great thing to be recognized for, no question.
No, I know you were highly recognizable based on your swing routine at the plate when you were playing college baseball. That was probably what you were recognizable for. But yeah, it's cool to see that. And the next guy, one event later, a few days later, is recognizable because of his brand that I wasn't quite sure about either. Joey Cifuentes. As we transition over to the second part of our winning ways, Joey Cifuentes taking the title in his second Elite Series event. I mean, he's a rookie, but he's been a professional fisherman for a few years now. We have to, for clarification, we added 14 anglers to the Elite Series. Larry Nixon through the legend status. You have Keith Poche and Bradley Hallman come through as former Elite Series anglers requalifying. So they can't be rookies. They've already been on this series. They can't be rookies. So you got 11 anglers coming in with rookie status because none of them have surpassed $500,000 in B.A.S.S winnings. So they can't be, or they're the only rookies. And Joey Cifuentes, the cowboy. I mean, he sports the cowboy hat. I don't know if he if he pulls it down extra tight when he's running or if he takes it off and holds it, but you can't just slip. I I slip it over the gear shift or through my wrist when I have a ball cap. I don't know if there's a place. I mean, you're going to have to put it in a box.
Store it up.
Yeah, exactly. But for Joey to have his brand of the Cowboy, and he goes to another extent, his boat wrap, if you roll up to it, it is subtle. There's paisley all over it. I mean, he is a cowboy rancher through and through in Arkansas. And boy, did he get it done in the mouth of Spring Creek, where I honestly could have saw it being won, but being so close to the spawn, I said, there's probably going to be one somewhere else. But if it was a college event, we'd have seen a lot more people in the Spring Creek area, not because they know more than the elites, but because of that style, technology-wise, would have maybe been pressured a lot more. But like Greg Hackney said, the Elite Series is full of the best fishermen, which means they're developing patterns by fishing elsewhere, and not all of them were going to try to rely on that. But obviously that ended up being the most consistent thing throughout all of the event. Joey Cifuentes took our title in the second elite.
Yeah, I mean, once again, you talk about back-to-back events like we, mentioned early on in the podcast, guys doing something completely different from the rest of the field. I think we mentioned this maybe 2 podcasts ago, or maybe it was just you and I were just talking, but if you'd have told me before the event that Drew Benton and Drew Cook on their home lake with fish on beds would have gotten basically, bounced off the hardwood by somebody drop shotting that far off the bank, I would have never believed it. But, it was certainly an event that was unexpected as far as the way it was won, to an extent, at least the technique that was, it was won by. And then you look in the top 10. I mean, outside of Pat Schlapper, it seemed like everybody else, at least that I could tell, was fishing shallow, fishing the bank. Pat was doing something, vaguely similar, but no, it was a really impressive performance by the rookie from my native state and your current state, great state of Arkansas.
Right up there by Greer's Ferry. He asked me if we'd ever have an elite at Greer's, and I said, I don't quite know if we're going to have the facilities for that, big man, but we can go to another lake nearby or something. But Joey Cifuentes, knocking it out. I think Okeechobee, Seminole, and even the Bassmaster Open at Lake Eufaula have taught me, even when we want it to happen, and even when the signs from nature with the trees budding and the fish being on the move and the water temperature rising and the warm nature and things like that, that we speed up the patterns of these fish more than they do. Yes, there are a percentage of fish that run to the bank, but seeing how many fish were caught off, how many big ones were caught doing what Joey was doing, how many big ones were caught doing what Tyler was doing, how many offshore people. There was one dude in the top 10 at Eufaula in the Open that was shallow. Everybody else was fishing offshore. Very, very interesting to see that, how it's mid-70s water. Bassmaster Magazine for the longest time has told me when the water hits 62, they're spawning. And it went from 55 to 74, 72 so fast that these fish haven't had their due diligence to build up the eggs and to do those things. So it's given me a little bit of pause. And I know in Arkansas, I learned this lesson as well. Every March, when it gets warm and you think they're on bed, you're going to catch your first sight fish in April. It just, you're not going to see them anywhere with the water levels we have, with the rain, with the cold fronts, all those things. So I look forward to this interview with Joey Cifuentes, our second Elite Series title. And we're going to get to the whole breakdown with Joey. And so I'm glad that he is our next guest on the podcast. Kyle, as promised, the second guest of our Winning Ways show for the first 2 Bassmaster Elite Series events is none other than Joey Cifuentes. And the Cowboy has done it, winning his second ever Bassmaster Elite Series event. Congratulations, Joey. We have to give a round of applause to you for accomplishing something. I mean, I don't know if you had expectations of how long it would take or if it would happen. You checked it off real quick, man. What's next? AOI Classic? Like, who knows?
Yeah, man. I appreciate it, guys. It was an awesome week, and my goal is to make the Classic. We just found out it's going to be on Grand Lake, so like I'm super pumped. I gotta keep catching them. I just want to make top 50s. That's my plan.
That's one thing Ronnie mentioned. I had the fortune to be there right after you won. We shot a tackle tip, of course, and we were chatting, and I just remember like the organic reaction you had think you were talking to your dad and you were like, of all tournaments, like I just won a Bassmaster Elite Series tournament. Like, I think it finally hit you then. You're like, it's not a local tournament. It's not this. You won a freaking Bassmaster Elite Series tournament. Like, just talk to me about that feeling. Cause I remember like feeling that whenever you said that. You were like, of all tournaments to win.
Yeah. Because there's just nothing like Bassmaster. I mean, it's where it all started. And I never knew that I would ever get to this point that, like even be fishing the Bassmaster Elite Series. So it's just I don't care if I came close in any of those other tournaments, like to win here and with Bassmaster and Elite Series event, it's just unreal, man. It was crazy. It was awesome.
Well, we talk about it all the time. The difference in winning an open or a local tournament or an Elite Series event or the classic, like Hank Cherry's won 2 classics and he's never won a full-fledged elite event. Like, there's just different things in each angler's DNA that makes them tick at a certain moment in the season, certain moment in an event. For you, it seemed like it made you didn't say it, but it felt like you had a burden on you, like you were a choke artist or something, or like you had just always had something fall short. Tell me a little bit about those experiences and a couple of those key moments where you either thought you had it in the bag in other tournaments, other trails, or you thought maybe if I catch one more fish I can win, and it just didn't happen because it seemed like you were carrying that weight on that final day for sure when it wasn't going as you like.
Yeah. So, I had some close tournaments, but specifically last year too. I mean, it was, I had 2 of them that I was right there and had big leads. And I just felt like, and to be honest with you, Ronnie, like, I think I choked. Like, I'll tell you 100%. I did things that I should have never done. My mind went crazy. I acted completely different than I did the whole rest of the tournaments because here I am sitting, in the lead and all this stuff. So, but yeah, that last day, I mean, it was, you have to think about those things. I mean, they're going to run through your head, and it's just really hard to not kind of think about that stuff, and like focus on what you're doing. But what I did though was just like, instead of, I was way more calm, and thankfully I'd been in those situations to where I could just say, you know what, I'm going to stick to my guns here. I'm going to fish no matter what happens. I'm going to, if I win or lose, like, I know I did well, and in the whole, I mean, I don't really know what to say. It's just like, those things, they happen for a reason, for sure. I mean, that's, it kept me, I was way more calm that last day. And I don't know, man. I mean, it just worked out.
Well, and I'd say you had all the reasons in the world to not be calm. I mean, other than day one, when you had just mentioned, in interviews that your hookup to land ratio wasn't what you wanted it to be, but you still caught a big enough bag to be on camera day 2. And then the day 2 and 3 seemed flawless for you. And then day 4, you catch a small one, get your day started. We're like, okay, one of the first catches of the day, he's going to just dominate. And then it was just like loss. I don't know what's going on, guys. And I was wondering, I said the same thing with Tyler Rivet when he had a tough day 3 in the first Elite. Are we going to see just a collapse or a spin out, or is he going to go run to the bank to go try to salvage this thing or something? And you started catching him, then you catch a giant, and it's just, it's all written history after that.
Yeah. So it's funny. Larry Nixon calls me the night before the tournament, and he said, Joey, he's like, no matter what happens, if the day starts slow and you're not catching them, just stay in your area, because it could happen late. Because I did have a few days where I caught some fish later in the day, but so that advice he gave me was really good. It kept me calm and knew, I knew what I was going to do. But yeah, that start of the day, man, it was stressful. I mean, losing those 2 or 3, I don't know how many it was, I still don't remember, but I know they were really good fish, or 4-pounders, and I mean, you don't know what the guys what they have out there in the field, and you got Tyler Vett just won a tournament, you got Greg Hackney behind you, like, whoo! I mean, it was crazy. It was intense, and I know a lot of people watching thought, like, man, I wish I could I had so many people say, Joe, I wish I could just told you that like you're winning, like you're going to win the tournament, but you don't
and
know
to stop
that.
grabbing your line. Everybody was wanting to tell you that, even though it worked every fish before that.
I knew you were going to bring that up, Ronnie. I knew you were going to bring
it's because I laugh at them as well. I'm like, bro, this guy's on the Bassmaster Elite Series. He didn't get lucky all these days. He's good. There's a reason he's doing it, and he's caught 6-pounders the last few days doing it. Leave the boy be.
Yeah, it's really something that I've never done before. Like I don't think I have. But it was kind of weird. I had a big spinning rod, like I think there was a 6-7 is what I was using, and I don't know, man. And then some of those fish were coming up and they were just like laying on their side, and they weren't really like, when I got them close, they weren't like really going fast and pulling away. So it just felt natural. That's all I can say. And I know it's not a good thing to do. But I did it and it worked. And some of those fish I lost the last day, like doing it, that last day was really high pressure, and like they didn't seem to be getting the bait really good in their mouth. So I think that was mainly why some of those fish came off. I don't think it was because I was grabbing my line, but yeah, all my buddies at home were they were mad at me. Text messages like, quit grabbing your line, And so anyways, it is what it is. It worked. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and I feel like typically when that kind of thing happens, that advice is usually coming from somebody who's not caught enough fish to know whether or not that's an actually like thing or not. Like you heard it somewhere else and you just think, oh, you know what? Like you're not supposed to grab your line. Well, why is he doing it? Well, because it's like you said, it's worked all week. So what does it matter?
Yeah.
Let's one thing I want to talk about, obviously the whole tournament, one of the biggest stories, at least it seemed like from my perspective, was the fact that you were doing something that was a little unexpected, something that, a lot of people didn't see coming. You have, all these guys that are so good at catching them, on bed, which they're heading that way, guys intercepting them like in shallow pre-spawn stuff. And then there you were doing something basically completely opposite from the rest of the top 10. First off, how did you find that spot in practice? And then second off, how were you able to like, I don't know, fend people off from it or kind of have it more or less to yourself, it seemed like?
So first off, I want to say I have a little bit of history on Seminole. I fished a tournament back there, a tour event, and I did terrible, but I learned then how good Spring Creek was. And then I fished another tournament, a smaller tournament, and me and my dad, he was fishing as a co-angler, and so he made a top 10, I made a top 10, and that tournament I really learned Spring Creek, and I just got to know it really well. So when I was going into that tournament, I was like, okay, I'm going to spend 3 days in Spring Creek. Like, I'm not going anywhere else. I think the tournament can be won in there. I don't know how, but I'm going to try and find it. So the first thing that came to my head, though, was like, we had some cold weather coming in. The moon wasn't right. I know there was some fish that were going to go up and spawn, but I didn't think there was going to be a big wave. And I knew there was still going to be quite a few pre-spawn fish. So I went to that same area right there, that little stretch. Like I made my top 10 there last time I fished that prior tournament. And I literally started there and practiced the first day and started catching them. There wasn't anybody out there, a few locals and stuff like that. But I just thought a lot of pre-spawn fish. There's always big fish. I live in Arkansas. We have a lot of timber here. Like big fish live out in the timber, suspended and stuff like that. So it felt right. And I just went out there and like I said, which was crazy, there was no pressure from any other guys. I mean, I saw a few people doing it in other parts of the creek. But in that particular area, for some reason, there just wasn't anybody. I don't know if I just got lucky on that or not, or if they missed them, but it was, it worked out.
Tell me about the special tree, and I'm going to dub it the special tree. You might have some other special trees. Feel free to tell us about those, but the special tree I'm going to say is on Bassmaster Live all week. If you got a tree that was not under the water, it was sticking up just above the water, and there was like a tuft of grass on it, and you'd get your cleat of your boat up on the bow right beside of it, and that was the money spot. What were you pitching to? What were they holding on? I know it's 20, 25 feet creek channel, and up in front of you, it's obviously going to be shallower, get to the flats. But why did it seem like every time you got around that specific tree that I remember with the grass on top of it or whatever, the new growth, it was a 4 to 6 pounder. It seemed, I think I remember seeing at least 2 or 3 of those through the tournament. And I was like, man, I'm going to just drive into Spring Creek and find that one tree and I'll be good for whatever tournament I'm going to fish.
Yeah. So that particular spot was actually 2 stumps. And they were, like you said, 22 foot of water. They probably came up like 6 or 7 foot, and there was 2 of them like right next to each other, and they were big. I mean, I don't know, maybe 3 foot like wide. Like they were huge stumps. Is what I guess. I mean, they were down there. I don't know, just looking at live scope. They were big, and I couldn't tell you. I think there was some, like, on top of those trees, there was a few crappie spawning on top. Or bass. I don't know. I really think I saw some bass spawning on top of stumps too, but I could never catch those fish. And I think they were crappie. And I don't know if those bass were hanging out, feeding on eating crappie or something. I don't know, but they're really around it. Like, I mean, the bottom, it just looked the same as everywhere else. It was just something about those trees. I know they were cypress stumps because I could see how they fanned out on the bottom, but I don't know. I mean, they were just there, Ronnie. Like they just loved that one spot, and there was always like 4 or 5 big ones there. And sometimes I pull up to him, and I get one to bite, or I catch 3. But it was sometimes I pull up there, and none of them would bite, So it was, but it was good. It was the 2 stump hole, we'll call it.
Well, it's you always want to find that highway in the pre-spawn. You want to find the place that those fish are going to go on before they go and spawn. But when you're in the creek channel of the biggest feeder creek in the lake, you've got the 2 rivers, and then you've got Spring Creek, and that creek isn't like a narrow one that's running back in a pocket at Greer's Ferry. It is a wide creek that twists and turns, and so there's always going to be sweet spots. But my fear when I look at people approaching things like that is, are there plenty of fish behind you that are coming to you? Because if those fish at you leave, what do you have there? Do you chase those fish up 10, 15 feet until they go spawn? Or do you just stay there and hope there's a new wave? When did you know that new wave was coming?
Yeah. So my fear going into the tournament was that 100%, I didn't think it was going to be a winning thing, because I thought with the warming trend that we were having that the fish were going to leave me, without a doubt. I did not think it would last 4 days, until day 3. All my fish day 3, I had just under 21 pounds. They were all post spawn. Every single one of them were skinny post spawn females. And at that point, I was like, okay, there was obviously a spawn that happened 2 or 3 weeks prior, whenever. It must have been warm. And I later end up asking somebody about it in the tournament, if it had been warm, and they said, yeah, I think so. So anyways, but like, yeah, there was fish. I had fish coming and going, man. Like, and I didn't really know that for sure until day 3. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, there's no point in me leaving and going shallow and trying to find some fish. There's going to be some coming to me. And I still think there was plenty of fish that were out there that were swimming up the creek that were going to spawn too. So it was just a perfect storm.
Talk to us a little bit about your setup, if you would. Obviously, like you mentioned earlier, having the bigger spinning rod was important to you because of all the timber and the things around. Talk to us a little bit about your setup.
Yeah. So, obviously I was in timber, and it was very thick. I mean, every 3 foot there was a tree, for the most part. So I have some bigger spinning rods, 7.6. Okay. And I typically I love using those for smallmouth up north. For some reason, I don't know. I just like a bigger rod, but like I had that rod, and I beefed up my main line to 12-pound test, 15-pound. I usually use 10. I used 15-pound braid, Berkeley X5 braid, and I just needed something heavier. I mean, it's so thick. I think I tried 10 in practice, and I broke a couple fish off. So I just wanted something heavier. I didn't want to go too big, because I didn't want the water in there in Spring Creek is gin clear. So, yeah, I mean, that was it. And the thing is, I had to make short little pitches to these fish, because like you could not make a cast, because by the time you hook that fish, there was, 30 trees in front of you, and there was no way of getting them back. So my theory behind it was if I get a little bigger rod, heavier rod, and I pitch it out there, I want to try and get those fish like straight up out of the trees as fast as I could. And so that's why I kind of beefed up my setup, and it worked.
Did you expect, okay, so when we were trying to bracket and kind of categorize the rookie class this year of when somebody was going to maybe get out to an early rookie of the year lead, and then these guys could come in mid-season, these guys are smallmouth guys, I kind of dubbed you just because of seeing some of your past success and seeing how Arkansas fishes at times. I was like, those last 3 events of the season is when Joey Cifuentes is going to make his charge. You already made your charge. I mean, you already got a first. Did you even see it coming at Seminole? The stylistically and bait-wise matches up to what other strengths that you have. Yeah. But, I mean, getting it done, that, like Kyle's kind of already asked that, but that's just something I thought about was like, sometimes when you least expect it, your greatest accomplishment can sneak up on you, and you just let it happen, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, no, I didn't expect. Honestly, I was just like you were. I mean, I'm looking for the tail end of the season because for some reason, and I can't explain it to you why I do well in smallmouth areas, but I just love to catch them. It's just something I love to do, and I get excited to go up there. When I go to Florida, I get really nervous. I don't know why. And maybe it's because I live in Arkansas and I fish for a lot of smallmouths here. And like, we don't have the kind of lakes, you know, that you have in Florida. But to be honest with you, man, I'm like, this year I felt is the most comfortable I've ever been going into Florida and fishing some of those lakes. Now, Okeechobee, like, I knew it was going to be a crapshoot because that place has changed so much and it's fishing so much different. But yeah, I didn't expect it, and it was good. So I mean, it's nice to start the year like that and get the ball rolling, and yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the rest of the year.
See, I've heard some alternate theories on why a guy like yourself from Arkansas does well up north in smallmouth fisheries. I've heard Stephen Browning say it's because you take a guy that fishes for 12 fish and you put him on a lake that has 12,000 fish on it, and he's going to be better off. So I remember him saying that specifically about a tournament you were doing well up north in. So, you know, maybe that could have something to do with it too. Just a lot more fish to fish for. You know, something that we kind of hit on there, being your strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, I think it's hard for somebody to look at what you've done so far and be like, what's his weakness? Like he's done the two like complete opposites and had success doing both. As an angler, like, what do you feel like your biggest strengths are, and then like your biggest weaknesses are?
Well, I can tell you what my biggest weakness is right off the bat, and it's anything to do with a bass around a bed. Well, I say that. Not so much smallmouth, but like largemouth bass around the bed. That's my biggest weakness. I do not do a lot of bed fishing. It's something that I know I need to get better at, but strengths wise, I feel really comfortable with a spinning rod in my hand. And I think it's obviously shown. But it's just something I grew up. It's what I used. I mean, it's the first thing I learned to use to fish with. And I do like finesse fishing. Like it's just something I love to do. I think you can, a lot of people think you catch a lot of small fish, you know, with small baits and stuff like that, but it's not true at all. So definitely my strength is with the spinning rod in my hand. And yeah, weakness is the bed fish.
Joey, are we gonna have to do something? Everybody keeps talking about it online. Are we gonna have to do something about forward-facing sonar? What's your take on it? On how it's changed the game, how it's helped, how you could possibly, being a pro and using it a bunch, how you could see it could hurt. I just want kind of the unfiltered Joey Cifuentes on the goods and the bads. You know, there's goods about the Alabama rig and bads, and at the time the bads outweighed the good, and it was not allowed at Bassmaster. But with forward-facing sonar, it's kind of a juggling act. What do you think?
Yeah, so I look at forward-facing sonar as no different than like side scan when it came out or 2D sonar when it came out. It is not something that catches a fish for you. It just locates them. Now, it does it better than anything we've ever had, but 5 years, 10 years from now, there's going to be something else that's going to be the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, and Okay, yeah, we're catching more fish and we are putting more pressure on a lot more fish in the lakes. And yeah, I think you're going to see, you will see a definite effect from that. But um, if it's a tool, man, and you know, like I'm going to use it. And I'm not, to be honest with you guys, like I'm not an expert at live scope. I think it's very simple to use. Like I don't touch any buttons or anything like tweaking stuff. Like I just turn it on and use it. Like, so, but it's going to change. It's going to change stuff. I mean, there's no doubt, but you know, we'll adapt and new things will come out. And the people that don't like it, I mean, it's, you don't need to, you know, you need to take all your graphs off your boat. That's all I can say to you. Like you just need to, I mean, you go back to the basics or whatever, but I'm going to use it cause you know, I have to. And I think it's great.
Follow-up question. Does Joey Cifuentes know how to catch a bass without it?
100%. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
good. The fans didn't think so. Fans don't think the pros know how to fish without it. So it's good to hear that they do. Kyle,
yeah,
what do you got?
I was just going to say, oh, go ahead, Joey.
No, I was just going to say, there's no doubt. I mean, that's a simple question, but like, I grew up without one of those things. Honestly, for me, like I didn't use, when it first came out, everybody was using it. The guys I was competing against on the tour level events I was fishing, they used it for 3 or 4 years before I even put it on my boat. I was against it, kind of like, no, I want to kind of stick to just, you know, fishing, if you will, or more feel and stuff like that. And then, you know, I kind of got away with that. But
well, I think Kyle and I talked about it in past podcasts and just as friends on the phone. Like, I highly recommend kids learning to fish, high schoolers, college anglers, actually going fishing and taking that knowledge and then using that tool. If you only go fishing when you're looking at that, you're going to forget when they don't bite and you're looking at them, or when it doesn't factor, what are you going to lean back on? You still need that instincts and that foundation. And so Kyle and I always talk about that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on that, because if you don't know, or you know how to catch bass without it, yeah, I think it's not going to help you just to try and figure out how to catch fish on live scope. Like you have to know other things, because you know, we went to Florida. I mean, I never used it in Florida. You know, it's just something I wouldn't think. I mean, you know, on Okeechobee particularly, like I'm not going to use it on Okeechobee. The lake just wasn't right set up for it. Now Tyler used it and he found the channel and all that stuff, but like it's not something that I rely on 100%. Like I try all different kinds of things. It just happened that this tournament is you know, needed it.
Well, Kyle, if Joey did use it at Okeechobee, he could probably see fish 30 feet out there getting caught by a local or another pro nearby. He'd be like, oh, that guy's got one over there, and then it jumps, and they'll be like, how did you know? And it was like, I saw him get stolen off live scope, but I digress.
Yeah, no kidding. I was around Joey in that area on Lake Okeechobee, and that was pretty wild. It's hard to have seen that one coming, I guess. But Joey, one thing I do want to mention, obviously, I think this is going to be a story we'll probably beat down until the end of time, but you know, your relationship with Larry Nixon, I feel like that's something that, you know, if somebody doesn't know yet, which obviously, like I said, they will, and most probably do, just tell me about that you know, upcoming with Larry Nixon and getting to fish with him and kind of have him as your mentor, because I know, you know, you've obviously said in a handful of stories how much that's meant to you, you know, in your professional career.
Yeah. So a kid I'm best friends with here, I end up, the guy we were talking about before we got on the show, Logan, we were team partners fishing, and his dad used to travel with Larry. And so, and to go to tournaments, stuff like that. So that's how I met Larry. And I just basically bugged my buddy, like, hey, I want to go fishing with Larry one time, just to say I did. And so I got to know Larry. We ended up going fishing, and we became buddies. He liked me. I loved to deer hunt, and like I killed some big deer over the time. So he thought that was cool. So we just jived, you know, we were just having fun and stuff. And so he asked me to go fish some tournaments with him. And I thought, hey man, like I had other things I wanted to do. Like I need to get a job, you know, and do some stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I'm gonna take a year. I'm gonna go fish with Larry. Just learn some stuff, and me and Larry hit it off, and yeah, I learned, like, I mean, anything in bass fishing tournaments, I mean, like all of it, like the finesse fishing that I do, like he taught me everything. So I owe so much to Larry. I mean, I've got a kind of that natural knack on the fishing thing. I don't know why. It's just something I like and I'm good at. That, obviously he doesn't have anything to do with. I think it comes from somebody else. But like Larry, man, he's just a great guy. I like you couldn't ask for a better person and a legend. And when we travel, we get to stay in free houses. So it's like it's awesome, man. I mean, Larry's he's a good dude, and yeah, I owe a lot to him, man. He's just taught me so much, and yeah, he's a good dude.
Do you ever let him know, like, hey, I just won an elite event and I won more money than probably your biggest Bassmaster victory netted you because he fished way back in the day? He's the first Bass millionaire, but he had a lot more tournaments had to win to get there.
Yeah, no, I would never say that to Larry, but he won mega bucks. That was like what?
Yeah, those were the big ones back in the day, but like it wasn't his rookie year's second event. You know what I'm saying? You're just touching.
Yeah.
He might make you pay a little bit more, like if y'all hang out at the classic or travel at the next elite. It might be you fit a couple bills. But tell us a quick Larry story, if he wouldn't be ashamed of it. Just one that you think the fans would enjoy, from whether it's on the road or probably you guys kicking back in the backyard around a fire or something, that just him telling the old stories, because we probably can't get enough of those old stories. The Bassmaster fans can't, for sure.
Man, you put me on the spot, Ronnie.
I did. We got all day.
I'll tell a story, and this is a travel story. So this is the first tournament I ever won as a co-angler. And we were on Sam Rayburn Lake, and this is like the first time we went down there too. And I was staying at Tommy Martin's house. Okay. So, Tommy Martin, like legend. Okay. So here I am, staying with Tommy Martin and Larry Nixon. And I did really well, obviously, in that tournament. I was in the final day, and prior to that, though, like just getting to eat and hang out with like Tommy and listen to the stories that him and Larry were telling about back in the day. Like, and here I am, like, don't even know anything about bass fishing, you know what I mean? Or like tournament stuff, and just starting out. So that was really cool. And then winning that tournament, that final, one of those days in that tournament, I got to fish with Denny Brower too. So
you just got the whole legend roundup there. Yeah.
So anyway, so then I got to hang out with him on the boat like all day. So like here, Tommy Martin, Larry Nixon, Denny Brower. And then I win the tournament, and all those guys came up, and I have to pull the picture back. I don't know where it's at. I need to actually put it in a frame, but it was Tommy and him and Larry, and we were all together, and we took a picture, and it was just like, it's just cool. I mean, you got some of the coolest guys and legends in the sport. I'll never forget that moment. It was really special.
That's awesome. Kyle,
yeah.
One thing, I'm athletic for the most part. I'm almost 30, so I'm less athletic than I was, but I played basketball. That's what I did. I played soccer, and then I played basketball. I like fishing in between. You're a big baseball guy, and you love some Texas Rangers. Joey's a big baseball guy. Are you guys going to clash ever when you're on the road, and maybe Joey's favorite team? Are you a Cardinals fan, Joey? So like Cardinals, Rangers, or what's the deal?
You guys aren't going to like my answer. So, well, I don't know if you're going to like it or not.
He likes the Tampa Bay Rays.
Don't say the Yankees.
Well, I was going to say the Tampa Bay Rays. I went to their first ever baseball game. When I lived in Florida, I went to their first game they ever played. And they've always really been my team. And so like, I follow them a lot. I think they're cool because, with some of the coaching they had, and just bringing a lot of young guys up, and the success that they have as a kind of a lower organization, I thought was really cool. So,
no question.
And Kyle, we were talking about it. I don't know what Joey played when he played college baseball. I don't know what position, but I feel like I'd put him at outfielder if he's allowed to wear the cowboy hat just for a second glove. Like, I got it. Like, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's against the rules. I didn't play.
One thing I do want to ask, because you and I do have a fairly similar, as far as getting into tournament bass fishing. Naturally, I'm not tournament bass fishing anymore because I work for Bassmaster. But like, one thing I read about you was like, whenever you stopped playing baseball, this was something that I had the exact same emotion about when I stopped playing baseball in college as well, was like, you had to fill that competitive void with something. And like bass fishing was that. Like, talk about that transition, because I remember that so vividly for myself. Like, I just want to hear it from your perspective. And obviously, it's obviously worked out for you, and it didn't for me.
Yeah. So, man, you do, like, I literally, since I was a kid, I mean, I didn't play any other sports. I mean, I was just like all about my goal in life was to be a, professional baseball player. I mean, that's all I wanted to do. So then you're doing it 365 days of the year, and then like you go to college and you get done college and you see like, okay, this is not happening. It's over, and yeah, I love golf too. Like, golf is another thing I love to do. But when I started fishing bass tournaments, man, like, just that, beating your buddies and the competitiveness and, like, yeah, I mean, all that stuff it just ate me up. I just fell in love with it instantly. So, but yeah, I needed to do something competitive. Like I said, if I wouldn't have done fishing, I'd be like probably trying to get in some golf tournaments or something like that, because I really like to play golf. But yeah, it's a great thing to get into after you get done playing sports, and maybe you might win a Bassmaster Elite Series event.
You could indeed. Tell me about the connection you and Brian New have, because Brian New was a guy who had a great mentor as well, Brian Thrift, and then New took the steps from fishing at the back of the boat at the local level, regional level, national level. And then at a certain point, it was time to get to the front of the boat. And he found a lot of success winning an ABA championship, winning an Elite Series event, his first event. So I think he's your buddy. And I don't know if he holds that over your head, but he got it done in 1 of 1, not 1 of 2. But oh well, you both cashed in on the first back-to-back of the year.
Yeah. Me and Brian we go pretty far back.
And hold on, you got to tell us the honeymoon thing too. Don't forget that in this whole thing. You just tell us the way back, and then tell us that at the end.
There's got to be an explanation for that. We got to hear about this.
Sorry.
For that, but yeah. So, me and Brian. Well, first off, Larry and Brian Thrift, like, they talked all the time in practice, and I think they were. When I started, maybe they used to be on a Chevy team or something together or something like that. I don't know, back in the day. And so they talked a bunch and we're buddies. And so every time, like, we saw each other on the lake, or Larry saw Brian, we'd come together, Brian Thrift. And like, then, so it's like, I'm sitting over there on the side of the boat, and like, there's Brian Thrift's co-angler, and it's Brian New. And so we're just like, hey, I'm like, hey, never really like talked to any outside of that. I didn't have his number, but then we start going out to eat or something like that. And so we kind of talked, exchanged numbers. We became friends, and he's an unbelievable angler, obviously. But like, me and Brian.
Here we go.
Yeah, so me and Brian always stay connected. Like, we talk to each other a bunch. We call each other Bo. I don't know why, but he calls me Bo. I call him Bo. I think it's kind of funny. Yeah, so the first year I ever tried to qualify for the Elites, I think, was a couple years ago, and I fished the Centrals, and Brian. It was actually the year that Brian, when he qualified, and so I called him or something. I said, "Hey, you need a travel buddy or partner guy or whatever." So, he said, "Yeah." So I didn't think about, him getting married or anything like that. And then we go to the last turn of the year. Is on Louisville Lake or whatever, just outside of Dallas, and he literally just got married, and like, you don't think about, like, we were going to stay together already, and he doesn't care. Like, Brian doesn't care. If that's the plans, like, that's what we're doing. And so he brought his wife with him, and yeah, we all slept in the hotel room together, and it was weird. It was a little weird, but I slept, I put some earplugs in, and I don't, we'll just say that. But me and go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I saw the photo that Brian posted the other day, and I think he had like the sleep machine or something, like the mask too. So that's just another element of it. Like, you got to wake up Brittany to get his attention, because he's over here just breathing in the thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that was weird. I'd seen it before because we had roomed together before, but anyway, that was a weird tournament, and I don't know. I know I did terrible in that tournament. Brian probably catch him, obviously, because he qualified for the Elites, but it's fun. I love Brian. Brittany, she's one of a kind for sure. And they got a little dog that this year going down to Okeechobee and everything, it hates me. It barks and barks like, I think it's my hat. I don't know why, but whatever. So
they got a little boy on the way too. They just announced that it's a little boy. They're the second child, so that's awesome. Kyle, you got anything else before we let Joey go?
Yeah, Joey, I gotta know. We are in the middle of March. It is March Madness time, and you are in Razorback country, which is also my homeland and Ronnie's current homeland. So I got to get your prediction. Hogs one and done. How far are we going this year?
I'm not going to say how many they're going to go for they're done, but it's not going to be. I hate to be like this. I know all the Arkansas fans are going to be mad, but I don't think they're going to go far. And I've watched them a lot this year. They're a young team, and they're not playing together as good as they need to be, unfortunately. Now I hope they prove me wrong. I really do. I would love for the Razorbacks to win, but and go real far, maybe Final Four or something like that. But it's not going to happen.
Kyle, what's scary about it is now we're talking about my sport and a new found love of Razorback sports. They got to make their free throws and they got to like stop doing the ISO ball like Joey said. But the one dangerous thing, if they do get past Illinois, they may have the easiest 1 seed to face. Kansas has the worst record. They're not the Kansas that we know of championships. If they get by that it could be another Elite Eight bound, and this team could sneak out them because they have the talent, but they just haven't put it together in conference play.
Yeah, I'm so biased. It's not even funny. Nobody wants to hear my opinion because I'm so biased. But I wish I could disagree. But they certainly have a lot of deficiencies, and it would be hard to believe that they're going to turn it around that fast. But I sure as heck hope they do.
Well, it makes me feel good. They lost the games. They lose 12 or 13 games this year, counting the tournament as well. And probably 6 of them are wins, 7 of them are wins. If they just make like a decent free throw percentage, like they get 75% of them, they win. So you hate to lose those type of games, but man, they're in a good position. All I know is they need to have a day 4 performance like Joey Cifuentes. When they have that bump in the road, just don't worry about it and just make the next basket. We'll see how it goes. But Joey, appreciate you joining us for this episode of the Bassmaster Podcast presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company. Appreciate you joining us. Winning ways, you and Tyler Rivet. We couldn't have had 2 diverse patterns for where we were fishing that you would never expect. And so we look forward to hearing about your signature series worm that you're going to have with your own name on it soon.
Yes. The Berkeley Cowboy worm. I don't know.
Cowboy worm. I like it. I can see that.
And something better than that. But yeah.
The giddy up.
Do what?
We'll call it the giddy up.
That'll work. Now, hey, really appreciate you guys having me on, and it's been awesome. This has been great. I love it. Can't wait to do it again.
Awesome. Joey Cifuentes, our second Elite Series champion of 2023. I know he'll be in Knoxville at the Classic on the sidelines, but I know he's already off to a great start to make his first Bassmaster Classic at Grand Lake, which really isn't that far. He'll be one of the closer anglers for that field if he does make it in 2024. Joey, appreciate you. Kyle, as always, appreciate you tagging along, co-hosting these with me.